Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone. My name is Payal Tandon. I will be your host in this algebra webinar. I welcome everybody to this webinar in which we're going to be talking mostly about algebra questions, but whatever principles we learn in this webinar are going to be applicable not only to algebra but also across the board for all of quant sections. So you should be able to apply these principles across all quant sections. All right, now in order to make sure that all of you are well prepared for the session, we shared a number of concepts with you, so I hope that you got a chance to go through these concept files. In fact, let's just get a quick yes/no answer to how many of you actually went through these files. So tell me, click yes if you've gone through at least one of these files here. Okay, I see that about good. 75% of the class has gone through at least one of these files. Well and good. Again, these files are included in your free trial. So after the webinar, if you are not as yet an e-GMAT student, definitely take the time to go through these files. They will really help you clarify those concepts pertaining to these difficult topics. So definitely go through them. All right, now every weekend we conduct these webinars, and likewise next weekend we have GMAT strategy webinar in which we're going to be talking about how is it that you create your own personalized study plan. So definitely register for that by clicking on this register now button. And then on next Sunday we have a quant workshop in which you will take a proctored mock test and you will get live feedback on how is it that you are in your conceptual understanding and where is it you are in your process application understanding. So definitely register for both of these sessions if you're looking to either figure out whether you're headed on the right path with regards to overall GMAT prep, which is what you're going to get from GMAT strategy webinar, or figure out where you're at in your quant prep so that you can spend the rest of your time through your GMAT test date to make sure that you prepare for quant in the right manner. Okay, so let's do that. Now, I see that majority of the largest segment in this class is taking the test within the next 15 days, so 36% of the class. Then we have the next group, about, again, similar size, 36% of the class is taking the test anywhere from 15 to 45 days. And then we have a almost similar size group, 29% of the class that's taking the test beyond 45 days. All right. Okay, so there's something for everyone to pick up, to get from this session. So again, don't think that you are, if your test is within the next 15 days, you will be at a disadvantage. Not at all. You will be able to pick up the insights from this session and apply on your quant prep right away. So with that, I'm going to change the presentation mode here. And it's going to take a couple of seconds for this new presentation layout to get stabilized at your end. So when you start to see Algebra Quant Live session on your screen, click on yes here, and let me, click on yes as soon as you start to see Algebra Quant Live session. All right, sounds good. Now, just a few housekeeping rules here. Any questions that I ask of you, please put the responses of those in the yes/no poll or the short answer poll or any other poll that I activate. Any questions that you ask that originate from you, put those questions in the Q&A part so that Ashutosh can respond to those questions. By the way, I'd like to introduce Ashutosh. He's our resident GMAT expert and resident strategy expert. So if you have any questions pertaining to quant in general or pertaining to your study plan in general or strategy to prepare in general, definitely put your questions in the Q&A part so that Ashutosh can respond to those. Okay. All right. So let's get going here. I'm going to be skipping the introductory part of this session here, in which we talk about what sets us apart from the competition out there and what do you get when you sign up for the e-GMAT course. I'm going to be skipping all those parts. And feel free to go through these slides once I share the PDF with you at the end of the session. All right. Okay, there we go. So the purpose of this session is to make sure that you understand how to apply the concepts in the context of GMAT. Now, all the basic concepts, the manner in which we operate at e-GMAT is that we teach you the basic concepts through the concept files, and then right after we introduce those concepts to you, we teach you the application of those concepts through the application files. So you're learning the application right when you're learning the concepts, which is something that sets us apart from all the other either the books or all the other online courses that are available out there. Okay, so we are going to be following similar structure here. I'm not going to be teaching you concepts, but I will give you certain warm-up questions so that you understand what your level of understanding of those concepts is. So I'm going to be giving you feedback on that, but then we'll get right into the application of those concepts in the GMAT context. So it's really a very application-heavy, application-oriented webinar, and that's the reason why we share these concept files with you so that you're well prepared to answer the questions that are there in this session. Now again, we are focusing heavily on process that you need to use to solve questions, and at e-GMAT we strongly believe that you shouldn't be looking at the question to decide what process it is that you need to apply, or what shortcut it is that you need to apply, or what trick it is that you need to apply. You need to apply a very standard process across the board regardless of what the question is asking you, and that is what I'm going to be demonstrating here. Now, as the questions get more difficult, obviously the manner in which you apply the process becomes more involved. There are a lot more process skills that you need to apply in order to get to the correct solution of that question. So we are going to be focusing heavily on that, and then I want you to note down your key takeaways from each and every question as we solve those questions. Okay, but one thing that I want to be very clear about is if you are sitting in this session to learn shortcuts or tricks, you're not going to get that. But if you're in this session to learn how is it that you can ace quant in the context of algebra here, but again you apply that, you'll be able to apply those principles across the board for all of quant. Okay, then you're at the right place. All right, so how we're going to do this is I'm going to be giving you 6 warm-up questions. I'm going to be timing you not in a very strict sense here. As soon as about 50% of the class puts in the responses, I'm going to give you either a 10-second warning or let's say a 30-second warning depending upon the complexity level of the question, and then we're going to solve more difficult questions in the GMAT context, 6 problem-solving questions and 3 data sufficiency questions. Okay, all right, so with this, let's get going with the warm-up section here. Do all of you have a pen and a paper with you? Yes, no? Okay, good. So let's get going. I am going to get you the poll here. But before I get going there, let me ask you, how many of you feel confident about algebra? How many of you feel confident about algebra? So about 65% of the class. Now, for those of you who are facing problems with quant, what is it that you're facing problems with? It can be specific to algebra, or it can be broad, as broad as this is what I have issues with in terms of quant. So I see number properties. What specifically number properties? Combinations, solving questions within the time constraints. Okay. Permutations and combination probabilities. Okay. Series, coordinates. Okay. Data sufficiency mostly. Okay. Remembering all the rules across the board. Data sufficiency with 3+ variables. Okay, that's pretty specific there. All right, sounds good. So let's get going here. These are the topics that you have indicated you have issues with. Now I'm going to ask similar question towards the middle of the session, and then I'm going to ask you, okay, where is it that you're really facing issues with? Okay, so let's concentrate on the question at hand, and then we'll get going. And here you go. This is your first question. I'll give you the poll. Can you please click on still solving here? Alright, I'm going to end the poll here in the next 10 seconds. Please put in your answers. Alright, ending the poll here. Now here's the poll for question number 2. Can you please click on still solving, and then I'll activate the question as well. Sounds good. Here you go. Question 2. Alright, last few seconds. Alright, I'm going to end the poll now. One more question and then we'll get to the discussion of these questions. Here you go. Please click on still solving. Alright. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So tell me, how was your comfort level with these questions? Did you feel that you were hard pressed for time? What did you feel? And let me get the poll here, which you can put in your answers. What was your comfort level? And there's a reason why I'm asking this, because these are basic questions. These are warm-up questions. These are very basic conceptual questions. But I found that you, as a class, you were taking a lot more time than what I would have expected. So second question was confusing, time constraint for the last question. Yeah, I mean, these questions should not have taken this long, frankly speaking. So insecure of my understanding is right. So yeah, for some people, I could see that they were clicking on the correct choice right away, but then there were quite a few of you who were taking a bit longer. So again, I don't want you to take that as a negative, as a criticism, but as a constructive feedback that there is something not quite right with your conceptual understanding. You're not there at that 200% conceptual clarity. Okay, and it's very important for you to get very, very comfortable with the basic concepts, because if you're not comfortable, if you just know the concepts on the surface and not in the detail that you are required to know those concepts, then it becomes difficult for you to apply those concepts on 700 level questions. Okay, so that's my feedback to you as a group. Now obviously there are some people who were able to solve these questions rather quickly and correctly, so again this feedback doesn't apply for them. But for those of you who, and again I want you to be critical of yourself, if you felt that you weren't sure how to solve these inequalities, or that you were taking longer to solve these inequalities, then this feedback is pertinent to you. Okay, all right, so now let's go into the discussion of a brief discussion of each of these questions. Question number 1 over here was quite a few of you got this question correct. 77% of the class got the question correct. Again, it's a it's a linear inequality in single variable. You collect all the variables, all the like terms on one side, and then you basically calculate, and what you get is y is greater than -2. Again, no brainer here. There are 9 of you who selected wrong answer over here. So again, there's nothing complicated about this. So again, my feedback to the 9 of you there is that you need to work on your inequalities, the basic concepts pertaining to inequalities. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to our next question, question number 2 here. Now this is where things started to slow down a little bit, and let's get the poll for question number 2. And the accuracy also went down. So the accuracy for the previous question was 77%. For this one, it's 61%. And again, you guys were, as a group, you were taking longer. You took longer to solve this. And again, this is a straightforward one. Instead of one variable, now there are 2 variables. So linear inequalities in 2 variables and 2 linear inequalities. So again, you need to know the method to solve these. So for those of you who took longer to solve this question, my feedback to you is you need to go and revise the basic concepts pertaining to how is it that you solve linear inequalities into variables. So again, you have those concept files in your free trial, so definitely review those concept files once again. Okay, so again, that's what it is for question number 2. Now let's come to question number 3. Now this is where there were 2 layers of complexity. Again, not 700 level complexity, but just a little bit there were 2 wrenches that we threw in here. Okay, and again, the accuracy for this question is really low. 26% of the class got this question correct. The correct answer is 3. Now, as I said, there were 2 layers of complexity here. The first one was, again, in terms of the basic concept, it's the same, that you have to solve 2 linear inequalities into variables, right? So we solved this. Now, if you simply cancelled out the n and you said, okay, minus 4m is greater than minus 10, which means 4m is greater than 10, you cancelled out the negative sign. How many of you did this? How many of you cancelled out the negative sign, minus from both sides, the way you would handle an equation, and you got 4m is greater than 10? How many of you did that? And I need more responses here. Alright, so I see about 5 students have done that, 7 students. Let's get some more responses, because this is a very, very key concept. Okay, so about 22% of the class, 9 students have done that. So my feedback to 9 of you is that in inequalities, you cannot simply cancel out the negative sign. Okay, whenever you multiply both sides, basically what you're doing when you're cancelling out the negative sign is you're multiplying both sides of the inequality with a negative number, with -1 to be more precise. And whenever you multiply both sides of the inequality with a negative number, you always need to change the sign of the inequality. This is a very, very important concept that you need to be aware of while solving inequality. So in this case, this is absolutely wrong. In fact, because we are multiplying both sides by a negative number, by -1, we need to change the sign of inequality, and that's where we get 4m is less than 10. So that's one mistake that quite a few of you have done. Okay, so please make a note of that in your scratch pad, in your notes right now. Okay, now here comes the second mistake. For those of you who selected 2 as the correct answer, the main mistake that you did was you didn't consider the non-negative integral values part correctly. You didn't consider that 0 is also a non-negative number, and that is why you missed out 0 from the count over here and you ended up selecting choice 2. Okay, so that is why you got the question wrong. Okay, now when it comes to non-negative integral values, the mistake pertaining to this part, this mistake is really what we call as it really falls in the process in a process skill category that we call as applying constraints. So you were not able to apply the constraints properly. Okay, and what do I mean by that? You weren't really aware of what the non-negative integral values are. You didn't consider 0 to be part of that non-negative integral value. Okay, so now this process skill is not only applicable to algebra, it's applicable across the board for all of quant. So if you work on this process skill of applying constraints, understanding what constraints the question statement provides to you, you will be able to improve not only in algebra but also in the entire quant spectrum. Okay, does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay, good. So 2 mistakes here. First one, very specific to inequalities, that whenever you multiply both sides of inequality with a negative number, you always have to change the sign of the inequality. The second one, which is applicable across all quant, applying constraints, you need to be very, very clear about what non-negative integers are. 0 is a non-negative integer. Okay, all right. So now let's move on to our next set of warm-up questions here. Okay, now we are moving away from linear inequalities and getting into the other kind of inequalities there. All right, so I'm going to get the poll here. Let's click on still solving, please, and then I'm going to show you the question. All right, here you go. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and I'm going to get another poll here for question number 5, and then we'll discuss both the questions together. Here you go, please click on still solving. All right, question number 5. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, let's talk about question number 4 now. Now, how many of you are comfortable with quadratic inequalities? Again, there's a reason why I'm asking this question. Again, you guys took a little bit longer to solve the questions. So, how many of you feel comfortable with quadratic inequalities? Okay, not very comfortable. Again, yeah, half of the class is and the other half is not. Now again, the quadratic inequalities are relatively straightforward if we approach it from a logical standpoint. Okay, now really speaking, what is this telling us? What this is telling us is that there are two numbers, product of which is greater than 0. Now in what cases will the product of two numbers be greater than 0? Either if both are positive or if both are negative, right? So that's what we are saying, that that the product of these two numbers is greater than 0 if both are positive or if both are negative, right? These are the two conditions. Now what we do is, based on these conditions, we come up with the ranges for x. Okay, and how do we do that? If both x minus 2 and x minus 3 are positive, then that means x minus 2 is greater than 0, x minus 3 is greater than 0, right? And from there, what we get is x is greater than 3. Now, for both of these conditions to be true, what is it that our range for x is greater than 3, right? For both of these conditions to be true. Now, likewise, what we say is, okay, x minus 2 and x minus 3 are negative. We again come up with similar stuff. Now again, for both of these conditions to be true, what should be true? X should be less than 2, because if x is less than 2, then definitely it's going to be less than 3 as well, right? So combining both inequalities, this is what we get. Okay. Now, basically then what we get is, this is the range that we have then. Sorry, this is the range that we come up with, right? Now, there is another way to solve this question, which is using the wavy line method. Okay, now I'm not going to be discussing the wavy line method in detail, but I'm going to be pointing you in the direction so that you can learn this wavy line method. But essentially the wavy line method is a derivation of the basic logic that we applied to solve this question. Okay, so if you just want to apply something real quick, then definitely understand the wavy line method, or you can go the method that I just explained to you early on. Okay, so again, you can go through the wavy line method. I'm going to be sharing with you the link of the article as well, with reading which you can understand how to apply this method. Okay, now let's look at question number 5. So question number 5, let's get the board here for question 5. All right, so choice C is the correct answer, and less than 50% of the class got this question correct. Okay, now what is happening in this question? Tell me. This is not your linear inequality. This is not your quadratic inequality. What's going on in this question? Can I convert this into a linear inequality by simply saying x minus 3 is less than 0? I can simply move x plus 4 on the right hand side, and x plus 4 times 0 is going to be 0. So x minus 3 is less than 0. How many of you think I can do that? How many of you think that I can simply write x minus 3 is less than 0? I cannot do that. Why? Because I don't know if x plus 4 is positive or negative. If x plus 4 is negative, right, then if I multiply both sides by a negative number, my inequality sign will need to change to greater than. Okay, right? So that's the reason. Now it's the reason is not that numerator cannot be 0 or x plus 4 gets undefined, the equation gets undefined. No, that's not the reason. The reason is we don't know the sign, we don't know whether x plus 4 is negative or positive. If we knew that x plus 4 is negative, then we could have definitely multiplied it, taken it to the other side, but then we would have had to change the sign of the inequality. That is the reason why we cannot do that. Now, we do have to bring it to a form that we can easily solve. Now, what is that form? That form is a quadratic inequality. If we multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole square. Okay, let me get rid of my scribbles here. If we multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole square, I can multiply, right? Because x plus 4 whole square is a square, which means that it's a positive number. So if I do that, then my x plus 4 in the denominator will get cancelled out, and what I'll get is a quadratic inequality. Okay, how many of you solved the question in this manner? Again, the accuracy for this question is pretty low. Less than 50% of the class got the question correct. Okay, so again, once I do that, then I can now apply my wavy line method or the method based on solid principles, and I can get to the answer. Okay, so again, the key thing over here is you will notice one thing, that I'm not going into the details of the working out of the question. Okay, for that I want you to learn the wavy line method. Okay, I want you to learn that on your own time. Okay, because there's an article that's going to teach you exactly that. Okay, but what the articles are not going to tell you, what nobody else out there is going to tell you is, how is it that you figure this stuff out? How is it that you apply the basic principles and understand that, okay, I cannot really multiply x plus 4 on both sides. I cannot really do the stuff that I typically do with an equation. These things are very common with an equation, but you can't do that in an inequality. Okay, why? Because if you multiply both sides by a negative number, the sign of the inequality needs to change. And that is a very basic concept that some of you know, but you don't know it to the extent that you can apply that concept to solve such questions. Okay, so now the challenge becomes, how do I solve this inequality? So before you even pen down anything in your scratch pad, what you have to think about is, what is my strategy? How do I go about doing it? And the thing that should come to your mind is that, okay, I know linear inequalities, I know quadratic inequalities. Now if I multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole square, I will be able to get a quadratic inequality. And that's how you come to this point. And then once you come to this point, then the solution is simply your basic concept that you have to apply. Okay, so again, this is how you have to think about approaching a question. Again, you do a step-by-step thing. You first understand what the question is asking you to do, then you decide, okay, how is it that you're going to be approaching that, and then you basically start to solve it. Okay, this is your conceptual understanding. Okay, this is your process application, which also utilizes your conceptual understanding. Your process application requires conceptual understanding. Now, what concept are we applying here? The concept that we are applying here is that if you multiply both sides by a negative number, then the sign of the inequality changes. And the fact that you don't know what the sign of x plus 4 is. Okay? If x is minus 5, then the sign of x plus 4 is going to be minus. If x is, let's say, minus 7, then the sign of x plus 4 is minus. Okay? Does this make sense? Yes or no? Okay, I have a question here. Can I explain why I can't cross multiply? You cannot cross multiply because you don't know whether x plus 4 is positive or negative. If it is positive, then x minus 3 is less than 0. If it's negative, then x minus 3 is greater than 0, right? Because then you'll have to change the sign of inequality. Okay? Alright, so now let's come to our last warm-up question, question number 6 here. Okay, one question I have, one request that I have is, again, short answer poll, please reserve that for the responses that I ask, for the responses on questions that I ask, because then I continually remove the responses from here, so then I don't want your question to get lost. So definitely put your question in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can answer those questions. Okay, all right. Now here is the last question. This should be relatively straightforward. It's a basic application of absolute values. Yes, while you solve the question, I'll bring the poll. There you go. All right, almost everyone got the question correct here. So again, relatively straightforward here. Choice C is the you need to visualize this on the number line. That's the easiest way to solve absolute value inequalities. So again, over here, again, I don't even need to go into the details of it. You guys understand this. All right, so now let's get some responses here. How many of you got at least one question wrong in the warm-up section? I'm going to get the poll here actually. Select the number of questions that you got correct in the warm-up section. Okay. Let's see how many responses do I have here. All right, let's get a few more responses here, because again, this is the critical part of the feedback. Okay, for all of you who got all the 6 questions correct, good job. I just want to make sure that you didn't get even a single one correct just by fluke. Okay, so make sure that you're very critical of how is it that you're getting the questions correct. So that's really good. That's very important. Most likely there are three of you who got 5 questions correct. My guess is you faulted on the question in which the non-negative integral value was asked. So for you, my feedback would be just make a note of 0 is a non-negative number. Okay. Now, for those of you who got fewer than 5 questions correct, make sure that you understand all the concepts to 200% level. Okay. This is not just something that I have got from thin air. No, 200% clarity in concepts is required. Okay, what do I mean by that? By that, what I mean is that yes, you may know that if you multiply both sides of inequality with a negative number, then the sign changes. But how does that apply to when you are figuring out what methodology to use to solve, or when you're figuring out the steps to solve the question? Okay, for example, in the question in which we had x plus 3 over x plus 4, how do you apply? Do you have that level of confidence on this particular concept that you can apply that over here to determine that, okay, you cannot just multiply both sides by x plus 4 because you don't know the sign of this number? That's the level of, that is what I mean by 200% clarity. Okay, so make sure that you work on that, because GMAT questions require you to apply these concepts to that level. Okay, now these were basic questions, so definitely take the feedback from these questions. Now we are going to move into higher degree of application of these concepts on questions that are 650 level and higher. Okay, so let's carry further. Now I just want to get the pulse of the class. How are we doing? How do you, what do you think about the session till now? It's important for me to gauge how you guys are feeling about the session. Good, great. Informative on the basics. Constructive. Good, good. Process is not clear. Found out that I'm not 200% clear. Now, for those of you who are saying process is not clear, again, I want you to go into the concept files and learn the concepts first. Okay, that's why you're probably not very certain about the process. Okay, I don't want this to be any. Don't think that you can't get there. And again, I have to make sure that I take care of everyone in the class here. That is why I say that, okay, I'm not going to be teaching you stuff, but I'm going to be pointing you in the right direction so that you can apply that feedback on your own. So for those of you who are not really comfortable with the process, please go into the concept files. Please look at the application files in the course so that you learn that at your own pace. For those of you for whom the session is a bit slow, I apologize for that. I know that it would be slow for some of you, but then we're going to increase the pace now. Okay. Now for wavy line method, look at this article over here to learn how is it that you apply the wavy line method. Okay. Alright, so now let's go into GMAT style questions. Again, these are 650 level questions. So we're going to be following the same process. I'm going to be showing you the poll and then you'll put in your answers. Let's get the poll here. Now, can you please click on still solving? All right, and here you go. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So good, about 60% of the class got the question correct here. So let's go through it. And it's a linear inequality in a single variable. There is no constraint specified on x, and that's very important for you to note whether there are any constraints on the variable. And when you rearrange, minus 32x is greater than 64. When you multiply both sides by a negative number, you have to change the sign of the inequality, which is why you get choice C as the correct answer and not choice B. So for those of you who selected choice B, this is the step that you faltered on. So again, make a note of this, that you should not be making this mistake. Okay, so x is less than minus 2 is the correct answer, and therefore choice C is the correct range. All right, good. So now let's move on to next question here. Now in this question, I want you to first click on still solving. One of the inequalities is same as before. It is same as the one in the previous question. So you can simply utilize the solution x is less than minus 2 for this one. Okay. So let's go ahead and solve this question now. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Now, when you look at the poll here, you would think that choice A is the correct answer, but the correct answer is choice B. Now, what you guys did over here was 50% of the class did everything right from algebra perspective. You solved it. It's a simple question, two linear inequalities, one variable, you had to find the minimum value of x. But what you missed out on was a process skill of applying constraints. You did not notice that there is this constraint here, minimum value of the integer x. So you didn't notice the constraint. Now if it's an integer, then minus 5.5 cannot be the correct answer because x is an integer. So this is the process skill that you did not apply. And this process skill is applicable across the board for all of quant. Okay, which is why I said that in this session you're not only going to get feedback on how you're doing in algebra, you'll also get feedback on how is it that you can improve across all of quant. And by improving your basic skills of identifying constraints, making sure that you're getting everything from the question statement is going to help you across the board. Okay. So again, any comments on this? Do you look for constraints such as these? Again, it's just little things like these will basically help you get to that next level in quant. Okay, it's not many a times if you basically look at if you were solving this question on your own, and you look at the solution, how many of you will disregard this by saying, oh, I actually made a mistake, I didn't look at that integer was asked? How many of you will simply consider this to be a silly mistake? There is no silly mistake. Okay, this definitely should not be classified as a silly mistake. Why? Because there is a process step that you did not do, which is that you didn't consider the constraint that was specified in the question statement. Okay, so very, very important, and this has got nothing to do with algebra. From algebra perspective, you got to this point absolutely fine. So basically, in your error log, if you mark this as an algebra question that you got wrong, or as a linear inequality question that you got wrong, that value, that entry in your error log is not going to help you. Why? Because you didn't pinpoint the exact reason why you got this question wrong. The reason that you got this question wrong was because of the process skill of applying constraints that you didn't apply. Okay, is this point clear? Yes or no? Okay. All right, sounds good. Now let's move on to our next question here, question number 3. So let's get the board ready. Can you click on still solving, please? I'm going to be asking you 2 questions back to back, so let's solve this one, and then we'll ask you, I'm going to ask you another question before we discuss both. Okay? All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Now here is the next question, question number 4. So read the question statement carefully. First, let's click on still solving, please. Okay, there you go. Solve this one now. Alright, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. How many of you feel confident about the two questions that you just solved? Now, the kind of feeling that you get that, oh yeah, these questions are pretty much in my stride, I can solve these questions. Okay, so less than half of the class. Alright, let's go over question number 3. The correct answer here is choice D, which very few people selected, okay, which about 25% of the class selected. So choice A was the more popular choice, and the reason why you selected choice 4 was again because you did not apply the constraint. So let me solve this one. Essentially, what is this telling you? And you can solve this question either by wavy line method or by the first principles. I'm going to be utilizing first principles here. Z square plus 4, so this is one number and this is another number. The product of these two numbers is less than 0, which means that one of these numbers should be positive and the other should be negative. That's for sure. Okay, now which one of these numbers can be negative? Now tell me, can z square plus 4 ever be negative? Can z square plus 4 as a number ever be negative? No. Why is that? Because z square is always a positive number and you're adding another positive number to it. So this is always positive. Okay, which means that for this inequality to hold true, the only number that can be negative here is z square minus 2. Okay, all right, so z square minus 2 is less than 0, which means that z square is less than 2, which means that the correct answer here is choice D. Now tell me, why did you falter here? So many of you faltered. Only 24% of the class selected choice D as the correct answer. Why did you falter here? Again, very important to understand these little things. This question, if you think about it, there is nothing much going on in this question. It's a relatively straightforward question. But still, 75% of the class did not select the correct answer. Did not consider that z square cannot be negative. So again, it's not that you don't know, and this is where I talk about the 200% clarity of concepts. It's not that you don't know that square of a number is always positive. You know that square of a number is always non-negative. But what you weren't really, so from the standpoint of conceptual knowledge, you have that conceptual knowledge, but what's missing is that 200% confidence in that particular concept. What do I mean by that? That you should be able to apply this concept in a very confident manner to questions such as these. Okay? So again, that is something which you have to be very, very confident about. And those are the skills that you have to build. Okay? By themselves, the concepts that GMAT tests you on are not difficult. They are very basic concepts, but it's really the application of those concepts that's very logical is what you need to focus on. Okay, now let's come to question number 4. And again, for those of you who are interested in the application of wavy line method, you can definitely take a look at this slide after you go through the article on wavy line method. Okay, all right, so now let's come to question number 4. And let's get the poll for that question. Give me 1 second here, trying to find the poll. Oh, it's right here. Sorry. Alright, so let's broadcast this. Choice C is the correct answer here. 40 less than half of the class got the question correct. Now here again we have to find the number of values of z square, okay, and what else is given to us, that z is an integer. So again what we get over here is similar stuff. 0 is less than or equal to z square is less than 2. Now because again till this point we had already solved the question from question number 3, right, in question as question number 3. Now since z is an integer, z square is also an integer. So z square could be 0 or 1. So the correct answer here is that there are two possible values over here. Okay, now again, if you made the mistake of not considering 0 as a possible value, then again you missed out on the constraint part that the square of a number is non-negative, right? So 0 is included in that. Okay, so again, less than half of the class got this question correct. People selected choice B as the correct answer, okay, which means that those of you who selected choice B, again, that's the mistake that you made. You did not consider that 0 is also a possible value of z square. Okay, alright, so again we've solved 4 questions. Each of these questions were less than 700 level. Okay, however, according to the makeup of this class, these questions appear to be difficult for this class as a whole, which means that there are certain concepts that you have to work on. There's certain level of clarity that you absolutely require. Okay, so take this feedback very seriously and make sure that you work on this feedback when you're preparing for quant in general. Okay, all right. Any takeaways? What are your takeaways from this? I mean, the takeaways that you see on the slide are takeaways that I want you to have, but for each individual, what do you take away from these 4 questions? Should read the question statement properly. Very good. What else? Stop being impulsive and care for constraints. Absolutely. Now, one rule of thumb that I always recommend is, and again, thank you for talking about not solving in a hurry and stop being impulsive. Thank you for talking about that. It's very important that when you look at the question statement, you spend a few seconds just looking at the question statement, just absorbing, drawing inferences, making note of the important information that's there in the question statement. If you spend those 15 to 20 seconds on the question statement without worrying about, taking down, without worrying about the calculations that you have to do, without worrying about the formula and stuff, you will see that the question solving mechanism is going to become a lot more straightforward. Okay, so definitely do that. All right. So good, very nice. Don't go about it mechanically. Thank you very much. I mean, these takeaways are really golden, and I'm so glad that you're able to get to these takeaways on your own. Okay, so good job at that. All right, so let's move on to 700 level questions now. Now, these questions you will see are becoming a lot more involved, but in terms of the conceptual understanding, they are testing similar type of concepts. Okay. So again, just they're going to be more involved in your working out stage, okay? But just do them step by step. I'm going to give you ample amount of time so you won't be stretched thin for time, okay? All right, so let's go ahead. Click on still solving, please. All right, here you go. All right, it's been quite some time, about 3 minutes. Do you guys need more time? Guess now? Yeah, let's give it another 30 seconds. Alright, I'm going to end the poll now. I know that 40% of you have not as yet selected the correct, have not as yet made a selection. That's okay. Let's go through the solution so that you can figure out where is it that you were stuck, because you took quite a bit of time over here. Okay, so the correct answer here is choice E. 6 is the correct answer. So let's go through this. What is this question telling us? There are two linear inequalities and two variables. We have to find the positive difference between the minimum possible value of x and minimum possible value of y. So essentially what we need to figure out is the ranges of x and range of y. Then from there we need to figure out what is the minimum possible value of x and then what is the minimum possible value of y, and then we take the difference between the two values, and that's the answer over there. Okay, so that's the mechanics of it. Okay, now how do you go about, so that's the approach that you have to utilize here. Okay, now you know how to figure out how to solve two linear inequalities. Okay, so the other thing that's very important is you need to note that x and y are two positive integers. Okay, that's another thing which is very important. Now you solve the linear inequalities. That's the basic concept here. How do you solve two linear inequalities in two variables? When you do all the working out here, what you end up getting is y is greater than 6. Now how many of you got y is greater than 6? Okay, how many of you got x is less than 8? How many of you got x is less than 8? Okay, not that many of you got x is less than 8. Now one mistake that I know people do is they somehow substitute the value of y as 6, and then they figure out the minimum value of y. They substitute that into one of the inequalities, and then they calculate the value of x. That is not correct. Why? Because what you really need to figure out is the ranges of x and y, and then independently you have to figure out what is the minimum possible value of x and what is the minimum possible value of y. That is how you have to do. Now if you take minimum possible value of y and put that in one of the inequalities to figure out what is the range of x, then that's not the correct methodology, because now that range of x is applicable only for that minimum value of y, and that is not what the question is asking you. So again, you have to be very clear about what the question is asking you. You need to set up that approach in your mind, that first I have to figure out the ranges of x and y independently, utilizing, I simply have to consider the two inequalities and I need to figure out the ranges of x and y. Then I apply my constraints and the answer that I've gotten for the range to figure out what is the minimum value of x and what is the minimum value of y. How many of you made the mistake that I just talked about? That you took the minimum value of y or x, whichever one you calculated, to figure out the value of the other variable. So about half of the class made that mistake. So again, understand, again, this is from the standpoint of inequalities, your concepts are fine. You're simply solving two inequalities, right? But where you faltered over here was from the question statement, understanding what the sequence of steps need to be in order to solve the question. So it's really the question understanding where you faltered, or visualizing the entire process that you need, visualizing the steps that you need to do in order to get to the correct answer. Okay, so again, from conceptual standpoint you're okay, but it's really the process standpoint that you were not able to assimilate the information and come up with that step-by-step thing to solve this question. Again, that's something which you really need to understand when you're doing your own practice, when you're solving questions, let's say in Scholaranium. You have to do that strategic review and figure out, why did I falter over here? Was it that I didn't know how to solve two linear inequalities, or was it that I didn't even understand what it is that I have to do once I solve the linear inequalities? Right? And again, the answer to those, depending upon the answer to those questions, you would then come up with your corrective action. Okay? Now I have these two ranges, right? X is less than 8 and y is greater than 6. Now what is the minimum possible value of x based on this? X is less than 8. What is the minimum possible value of x based on this? X is less than 8 and x is a positive integer. Now positive integer means that x is greater than 0, right? So the minimum value of x is 1 because x is an integer here and x is less than 8. Now what is the minimum possible value of y? It is 7, absolutely. It is 7. So again, the correct answer here is, the difference is 6, and that's what the correct answer is. Okay. Now, tell me, where did you falter here? So there are a couple of faltering points that we've already identified. The first one was wherein you didn't assimilate how is it that you should be solving this. You didn't really see, okay, you didn't solve the two inequalities to the to get the ranges. That's one faltering point. The other one is that you didn't assimilate this information properly to calculate that the minimum value of x as 1. Took the max value of x, I tried to compute the difference directly. Positive integer, placing y's value. Okay, so good. So I hope that you are able to understand. I mean, through this, again, identifying which step did you falter on is very, very important. And again, right now I'm there to tell you that, okay, these are the high level faltering points, but I want you to be in that habit yourself. That's why whenever you are doing solution review, make sure that your solutions that you're reviewing are detailed enough such that you get all these insights from the solution so that you can make that determination that, okay, I faltered at this step, I did these steps correctly, so from conceptual standpoint I'm okay, but I faltered at this step over here, which means I need to work on that part. Okay, so again, doing that kind of strategic review is very, very important, and such strategic review is possible only if you have solutions that are detailed enough to that extent. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to our next question. Now this is a rather involved question, and I would say, given how the class as a whole did on question number 5, this question is going to take even longer. It's not complicated, it's just a lot more involved in its working out. But what I would recommend, but it's a very good question from the standpoint of knowing how is it that you should be evaluating information, okay, and working out with information. So what I would say is, let's keep this question as a homework question. I want you to be in a very clear mindset and in a rested state when you're solving this question, in a fresh mindset. Okay, so definitely, and again, detailed solution is going to be available in the PDF that I'm going to be sharing with you. Okay, so solve this question on your own later on. Okay, so I'm going to now move on to the next question, and I believe next question is a DS question. Okay, so let's go into data sufficiency questions here. So let's get your poll. Everyone click on still solving, please. Okay, all right, there you go. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so how many of you think that this question was easy? Okay, about 60% of you, about 50%, okay. All right, so let's go through this. So the question statement, in a DS question, the step-by-step process is that first you assimilate everything that you can from the question statement. You simplify the question statement to the extent that you know exactly what it is that you're looking for from the question, from the individual statements. Then you analyze statement 1 to figure out whether you can answer the question that has been asked in the question statement. Then you analyze statement 2. If required, if neither of the two statements is sufficient alone, you then combine the two statements, information in the two statements, and then you see if the question can be answered. Okay, so let's do step 1 over here. Z is an so constraint has been given to us that Z is an integer. We need to figure out, is Z positive? The other thing that's given to us is that mod of Z is less than 6, which means that there are 11 possible values of Z, starting from -5, going all the way to 0, and then going all the way to +5. Okay, so how many of you got this information from the question statement? That's, there are 11 possible values of Z going from -4 to +5. Okay, good. Now let's look at statement number 1. Statement 1 says mod of Z minus 2 is greater than 3. Okay, now we can always write this down as, and this is the way that I like to solve it, mod of Z minus 2 is greater than 3, which means that Z minus 2 is greater than 3 or Z minus 2 is less than -3, right? Now, if I get that, from here what I get is Z is greater than 5 or Z is less than -1, right? Now, if Z, now according to this, what the question state, because from the question statement I know what are the various possibilities of Z, according to this what it's saying is that Z can be both positive and negative, right? But I have to combine the information that I already have from the question statement. What does the question statement tell me? Question statement tells me that Z is between -6 and 6, which means that now this part, statement 1 is telling me that Z is greater than 5. Now if I combine the information that's given, that the question statement also told me, there is no possible value such that Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than 6, because remember, Z is an integer. Okay, which means that Z is definitely a negative number. So statement 1 is sufficient. Is this point clear? How is it that I am determining that statement 1 is sufficient? Statement 1 is sufficient because if I only consider information from statement 1, definitely I won't get that. Definitely then Z can be both positive or negative. But I always have to take information from the question statement with me, because that is a set of information that I'm working with, right? So according to that set of information, Z is between -6 and 6. Now Z is greater than 5. But Z is less than 6. There is no integer value such that Z is greater than 5 but Z is less than 6, which means that the only possibility of Z, values of Z from statement number 1 is that Z is less than 1, which means that Z is not positive, which means that I have my answer, which means that A is the correct answer. Now only 8 of you were able to select choice A as the correct answer. Now again, right now A or D could be correct. I stand corrected. Because statement 1 is sufficient, either A would be correct answer or D would be correct answer. So now I need to figure out if D gives me, if statement 2 is also sufficient or not. Now when I look at statement 2 is simply telling me mod of Z is equal to 2, which means Z can be either +2 or -2, which means that I don't have my answer. which means that choice A is the correct answer. So now tell me, where did you guys falter? Only 8 of you were able to get to the correct answer, and I hope that the 8 of you who selected choice A selected it for the right reasons. That's very, very important. Did you select? Now, for those of you who selected choice A, did you select it for the right reasons? And by right reasons, I mean, did you follow the rationale that I have shown in the solution? Okay. So, now tell me, for those of you who didn't select choice A as the correct answer, where did you falter? Okay, you forgot that choice 2 can be negative or positive. Now again, choice 2 can be negative or positive. This, if you weren't able to figure this out, that mod of z is equal to 2 implies that z is plus 2 or minus 2, then that means that's a conceptual issue, basic absolute value conceptual issue. Okay, now tell me, again, I want to know more precise reasons for why you answered this question incorrectly, because again, from those reasons, you come up with the corrective action. And this kind of exercise is very important for you to do when you are solving questions on your own. This is what we call as strategic review. Okay, very, very important. So I want you to, now that you have the solution in front of you, I've walked you through the solution, tell me which step did you falter on so that I can tell you that, okay, this is the corrective action that you need to take. So I got one response earlier, which was that couldn't say that z is plus or minus 2, which means that you need to work on your absolute value concepts. So let's get a few responses here. I don't see anyone typing right now. Unable to solve inequality for mod. Okay, so that means you need to work on your, how do you solve absolute value inequalities? Okay, you need to work on that. Crossed intervals between, you didn't cross intervals between question stem and the information from statement 1. So again, that is a DS issue. It's not anything got to do with it. It's not specific to algebra. That is really a DS issue, that whatever is there in the question statement needs to be combined with the information in statement 1. Whatever is there in the question statement needs to be combined with the information in statement 2. And then if you have to analyze statements 1 and 2 together, then again it's question statement plus statement 1 plus statement 2. Okay, so that's why analysis of question statement is very, very important from two standpoints. One is you need to know what all information does the question statement give you. The second thing you need to know is how do you simplify, what is the simplified stuff that you need to answer from the question statement. Okay, so again, those two are the critical things that you get out of analysis of question statement in detail. Okay, then go back to the question restriction itself. So again, now that you understand, again, I hope that you can, how many of you can identify the value of strategic review? Okay, again, it's very important to know that, okay, where did I falter on so that I can fix those issues in the questions that I solve further. Now, as I said, if you didn't take the question statement with you, then that's not an issue with inequalities in general or with absolute value questions. It's an issue across the board for all DS questions, right? And that is the power of doing strategic review on the questions that you're doing, utilizing the detailed solution so that you take that information and apply that information, apply that feedback across the board. Okay, all right. Now let's solve. This is the last question. Let's solve this question and then, yeah. Let's get everyone to click on still solving, please. All right. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So again, a pretty divided response here. So let's go through the solution here. Is A less than B? So that's what we need to figure out. Is A less than B? There is no constraint that's specified over here. Now we take a look at statement 1. What does statement 1 say? And again, it's important to put this statement to understand the statement from a logical standpoint. Some number here, B minus A, is equal to modulus of another number. Forget about what is inside this other number. For all you know, this other number could be mod of X. Okay. But just see that B minus A, this number here, is equal to modulus of some other number. Now what does this tell you about B minus A? If B minus A is equal to modulus of another number, it means that B minus A is a non-negative number, or in other words, B minus A is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, and that's something which you get from here. Okay, it's a non-negative number, which means B minus A is greater than or equal to 0, which means that B is either greater than A or it's equal to A, which means that there are two things that are possible. Either A is equal to B or A is less than B. Which means that from statement 1, I cannot figure out whether I cannot answer the question whether A is less than B or not, because there is this condition possible for which I don't know the answer. I don't know whether A is equal to B or not. According to statement 1, A could be equal to B or A could be less than B, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay. Now, how many of you faltered at this analysis? And I believe that you either were not able to contextualize the question statement, the information in the statement itself, or even if you got to this point, you simply said B minus A is greater than 0. You didn't consider the equal to part over here. And quite a few of you did that mistake. So again, this is a very conceptual question. All you needed to know over here was that mod of a number is a non-negative number. Okay, so 0 equal to 0 is a required condition there. Is also one of the possibilities there. Okay, now A divided by B is less than 1, and this is where this is an inequality, right? This is an inequality. A by B is less than 1. Now here, when I multiply in order to simplify this, I can't simply say that A is less than B. Why? Because I don't know the sign of B. If B is a negative number and I multiply both sides by a negative number, then my answer will be A is greater than B. Okay, so again, this is where I apply my conceptual understanding of how to solve inequalities, that when I multiply both sides by a negative number, when I multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number, then the sign reverses. Now, if I'm not able to do that, then I will end up solving this question incorrectly. So again, there are two cases that come out of this this problem as well, which again tells me that okay, statement 2 is not sufficient. Now, how do I combine the two statements? I combine the two statements and I get to if both statements are correct, then the only way they both can be true is if A is less than B. This is the common condition. And combining both the statements, I get my answer that A is less than B, which means that I get a definitive answer of whether A is less than B or not, and therefore the correct answer is choice C. Now, only 4 of you selected the correct choice. Okay, So now tell me, where did you falter? What step did you falter on? Didn't consider that A is equal to B. So again, if you think about it, there is nothing high level of stuff that we are applying here. We are simply applying the basic concepts that we know of, okay? And that's why that 200% clarity is very, very important, okay? Basics in the module rule, absolutely. In the modulus rule. Now again, question number 9 is also along the same lines. I want you to solve this question on your own after you have reviewed the concept files in the free trial. Okay, so definitely spend the time in getting that level of conceptual clarity, in learning how to apply the concepts on these questions. Okay, now if you think about it, GMAT Quant is not a difficult topic to master. You can definitely improve from a low score if you focus on learning, and that's what successful students do, regardless of their starting level in quant. If they are focusing on learning the right way, if they are doing strategic review, if they are spending good amount of time on concept files and application files, there is no reason why you cannot improve. Okay, now this is a story of Krish. Krish was a very smart individual from the get-go. When I say smart individual, he was very sharp in quant from the get-go itself. However, when it came to GMAT questions, he found it really difficult to apply the concepts on GMAT questions because he wasn't focusing on that 200% clarity of concepts. Now that's when he changed his approach altogether towards quant, and he made sure that he doesn't fall in the traps. Now again, this is something which quite a few of you would have observed today. You were falling in those traps, in those easy traps that the test maker creates. Now again, that happens not because you don't know the concepts, but that happens because you don't know the concepts well enough to apply those concepts in the context of GMAT questions. And that's where Krish also faltered, and he then focused on solving questions the right way. He focused on solving questions using the fundamental approach, and he reviewed his solutions in quite a bit of detail, and he changed his approach towards DS completely, and that's what ended up with him getting a Q51. Now Leonardo, he's an example of a student who wasn't that good in quant to begin with, but his focus was on finance-based schools, which means that he needed a very good quant score to get into the likes of Wharton Tepper. Now he wasn't able to cross Q45 despite working really hard. And again, the common thing that you're going to find amongst these students is that it's not that they are not putting in the effort. They are putting in the effort, but the effort is not being put in the right manner. And that is why, despite spending so many hours with their full-time job, with their families, they're still not able to cross those barriers. And that is where learning the right way and utilizing the right tools in order to help you get to your target GMAT score is so very, very important. Now what helped Leonardo improve was that he utilized a methodical approach. He made sure that he got everything from the question, from the solution that he's reviewing, so that he doesn't make those mistakes again. He utilized Scholaranium quite a bit. He utilized Scholaranium as that. Scholaranium, if you think about, is the easiest way to maintain your error log. It tells you exactly what to focus on in your next quiz that you attempt, right? So he was able to isolate weakness utilizing the analytics provided by Scholaranium. And then he utilized custom quizzes. He did selective practice utilizing custom quizzes in Quant Scholaranium. And in the end, he scored a Q49, and with his amazing GMAT score, he was admitted to all the three, Stern, Tepper, and Wharton. Mazibar. Now this is a story of an individual who wasn't strong in quant to begin with, but it was his determination to go from a 20 percentile to a 59. He was able to get to a 59 percentile in quant, and again he did exactly the same thing. He first worked on building his basics, and then he worked on applying those basics on questions. Guillermo is another very interesting story of a person who started with a Q38, which is a 38 percentile on quant. And he also, like Leonardo, he focused on learning. He made sure that he got good estimate of where he's at in each of the subsections in quant, and then he followed a process to track his improvement. He as well utilized the custom quizzing feature of Quant Scholaranium in order to improve on the weak areas as determined by the analytics. Okay, so again, you can take a look at their debriefs. Again, I feel that viewing these video debriefs is very encouraging. It's very enlightening experience because you get to hear from people who actually have been in your shoes, and they have and how they have toiled through the process to get to where they're at right now. So again, it's very important to be in tune with these debriefs, and we routinely conduct these success story interviews so that we continue to provide you with those stories, with those interviews to view. So again, to ace GMAT Quant, what you need to do is focus on learning. That 200% clarity in concepts is very, very essential, and adopting good habits. By good habits, what I mean is that when you're reading a question statement, you spend 15 to 20 seconds absorbing everything that's there in the question statement so that you don't miss out on any information. Before you even start to solve the question, you come up with the approach to solve the question so that you don't make the mistakes that you made in that linear inequalities question where we asked the positive difference between minimum and maximum, minimum value of x and minimum value of y. Right? You need to know how is it that you need to apply those concepts to solve the question. So again, conceptual understanding is one thing, very important thing, that 200% level conceptual understanding. And then how do you take those concepts and how do you apply those concepts? That's again very, very important. And that's what the e-GMAT course is going to give you. It's going to give you that conceptual understanding, and then it's going to help you apply those concepts across the board. Okay. So with this, I have come to the end of this session. So feel free to write to us if you have any questions. Write to us at support@e-GMAT.com or at pile@e-GMAT.com, and our GMAT strategy consultants will help you solve the issues that you are facing so that you get to the path to your target GMAT score. All right. So with this, now there are quite a few practice questions in the PDF that I'm going to share. And again, you have quite a few questions in the Scholaranium platform. So I invite all of you to go through those Scholaranium questions so that you understand, okay, how is it that you should be approaching questions? What kind of detailed solutions you're going to get from the e-GMAT platform. So I really encourage you to go through it. Okay. So I'm going to change the pane now. And it's I want you to, so here's the session presentation, so you can download it from here, and I definitely would want you to give feedback on the session. So feel free to rate the session and give me your feedback. And again, as I said, we conduct these sessions on a weekly, 2 sessions every weekend. So we would want you to, we would want to get feedback from you so that we can implement the feedback. All right. So your feedback can include things such as, what did you learn from this session? What was an eye-opening thing? So definitely let us know about that. The recording of this session will be shared with you in another 4 to 5 hours. So yes, you will get the recording as well. Yes, I will be conducting a number properties session as well, and just stand by for, I can look up the schedule and tell you when that's going to be. I think it's going to be in 2 weeks from now, because next week there's quant workshop, week after next we're going to do number properties. How to access questions in Scholaranium? So simply register on e-GMAT.com and you should be able to look and then you click on Quant Scholaranium from your course dashboard and you should be able to get to Quant Scholaranium. Good, I'm really glad to hear that DS was great and you're going to work on your conceptual understanding. That is good. The recordings will be shared with you on your email address. If you're attending this session, that means you are registered, or if you, yeah, so you should be able to get recordings in your email. Alright then, so with this I'm going to end this session, and again thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience, and if you have any questions GMAT related or otherwise MBA related, definitely reach out to us. Connect with Rajat on his LinkedIn account. We write about 2 articles every week, so definitely stay tuned with everything GMAT related and MBA related by looking at that. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, and good luck for your preparation. The conceptual clarity you're focusing on, is it available on site? By that I mean, you mean by whether it's available in the course. Yes, absolutely. All the concept files in the course focus on building your conceptual ability. So definitely, so again, that's why what I would request you to do is go through the concept files that's there in the free trial, and you'll be able to see how clear the concepts would become as you go through those concept files. All right. Okay. Bye-bye then. Good luck for your GMAT preparation.